Wisconsin.
You're tuned in to Night Vision Radio, exposing the truth one secret at a time. Prepare yourself as we explore the shadow worlds of suppressed history, secret knowledge, forbidden religion, and shine a light on the conspiracies that keep it all from us. Welcome to Night Vision Radio. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Night Vision. I am your host, René Barnett. I'm so glad you could join me tonight. I do have a very fun and exciting show planned for tonight. But before I get into the heart of the subject matter of the show tonight, I did want to just recognize someone who left this plane just a week ago. That a lot of you may know him, and a lot of you may be familiar with his work. He's my good friend, Edward Flaherty, who was my Paris producer in my film Bloodline that many of you are familiar with. He was also our Paris producer and was actually on camera in Bloodline. So it wasn't just that he worked behind the camera. He also was on camera in the film, and that's where a lot of people remember him from. But Edward died suddenly in Cannes, France, a week ago, a little over a week ago, and he will be sorely missed. I mean, it was very shocking, and my goodness, he was such a light in the world. It's, you know, when someone that's so positive and so funny and so mischievous leaves us, we really recognize, you know, what a loss that it is, and it just really, I would urge everyone just to hold your friends and family tightly, because we never know how long that we have on this earthly plane. And I want to say to Edward, be glorious, my friend, and I will see you one day. All right. Well, thank you very much, Edward, for all your good work and all the fun times that we had. And I will, from here, switch over into our show tonight. You know, it's Thursday, which, of course, our show airs live every Thursday here on Inception Radio Network. But I was thinking about tonight, in particular, being a throwback Thursday, because tonight I'm going to take a little walk down memory lane, and I'm going to take you with me, and I'm going to take my guest along with us as our guide, as a matter of fact. My guest tonight is Dave Aaron. A lot of you may remember him or have heard of him, called Video Dave, but he was the creator of UFO Audio Video Clearinghouse. Now, when I first came across Dave, it was, back in probably around 1990 or early 91, when I started working for UFO Magazine. I was the managing editor there under the publisher and editor-in-chief Vicki Cooper. At that time, she later married our research director, Don Ecker, and became Vicki Cooper Ecker. And then I did a radio program for 5 years with Don Ecker called UFOs Tonight. And the UFO Audio Video Clearinghouse was our sponsor for most of that 5 years that I worked on the show live. And we ended up developing a great relationship with Dave Aaron, and he's kind of legendary in the UFO field. And now he has the largest video library in the world. Dave, I want to welcome you to the show. Should have had you on a long time ago.
Well, it's very kind of Inception Radio, and very interesting, Renee, that we're on the night after Halloween, and the name of the show is Night Vision.
That's right. That's right. Now, you know, I was, talking to you earlier, and you shared with me a story about how really you got sort of sparked in your interest in UFOs. And it was such a wonderful story because it goes back a long time. It goes back to 1964, and a night any of those of us who were alive and old enough to remember will remember that time, because it was the first appearance of the Beatles on television in the United States, and they were airing on the Ed Sullivan Show, and everybody was
February 9th.
February 9th, 1964. Well, so you, along with your parents at that time, were watching that show, and then can you just tell me what happened after that, because this was sort of the beginning of it all?
Well, back in those days, of course, there was no video recorders, but there were audio recorders, and I used to hang the microphone for those of us that are in our age group, between, I guess, 40 and 70, right? I used to hang the microphone over the speaker of the television, and I don't know how many people remember the late Joe Pine or Barney and Betty Hill's very first appearance on a Louis Lomax show on Fox TV. And there I was sitting recording Barney and Betty Hill that same night, telling their story on black and white TV. And my dad yelled, "Come here, quick," right? So I'm in the front room there, and the whole backyard is glowing orange. And my dad and I, and my mother and I, had come back from a skydiving exhibit, not too far back, maybe about 3 months prior to that, and a lot of these skydivers attach flares to their boots. So we were trying to figure out in our mind, when you see a UFO, because we know what a helicopter is, we know what a blimp is, we know what a jet is, we know what a propeller plane is. So your brain kind of short circuits out because you're trying to put logic into what you're seeing, right? And if you can picture yourself holding a 50-cent piece on an angle, this thing was swaying back and forth about the size of a star. And it kept going, like they call it the falling leaf effect in UFOlogy. And that thing kept coming closer and closer and closer. And then when it came right over our backyard, it flipped over. So the orange light was really a light on top of it. Then, if you remember the scene with Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where he stopped at the railroad track, and that huge bright light lights up his truck. Remember, everything shoots out of his dashboard and his glove compartment, and all his instruments started going crazy. Well, then a big white light lit up from the bottom, no sound whatsoever, round craft, and then it lands in the field today where the Pomona Freeway is. But my dad and I, we didn't know what, I didn't know what a UFO was or a flying saucer, so we ran out to the field to, quote, save these people in this strange-looking plane crash, right? Well,
right.
There was a field there, and for those people in Southern California that are listening to this is between 7th Avenue and Hacienda Boulevard on the 60 freeway in Rowland Heights, California. Today there is a walkover where the kids can walk over the top of the freeway to go to the school on the other side of the freeway. But at that time in 1964, we lived on a dead, not a cul-de-sac, but just a dead-end street that had a barrier on it. And then the rest was the field set aside for the future building of the Pomona Freeway. So there's this craft out there, which I think is a very large, like 2 or 3 engine jet, right? Because it was the size of like 2 Greyhound buses. So I figured there were people hurt in it. So I'm running down the field, and very strange, René, that I think about this back many times, but I think that of the wind rustling and all the crickets you hear in the field and things like that, it was totally silent. There wasn't a single sound in that area, in that field. So when I got up to the craft, about 6 feet from it, my father hid behind a bush about 20 or 30 feet away, and he says, "Get away from it, get away from it." It's one of those flying saucer things. And I didn't know what a flying saucer thing was. I heard it as a joke from people throwing frisbees and things like that, so I thought there were people hurt in it. And I was 21 years old at the time. And I asked, anybody in there? You need help, right? You need medical? And the side of the craft opened up, and the best way to describe it to your listeners is if you've seen those Terminator movies, how they turned into like a liquid, right? Mm-hmm. A little square in the craft, probably about 3 feet by maybe 2 feet high, turned into like a liquid. But it wasn't a liquid; it was a solid as well, kind of like mercury, I guess is a good way to describe it. A beam shot out of that hit me in the chest, and it lifted me off the ground about 3 feet, and it moved me about a block and a half away from the field and gently set me down on the street. Now, for those people that are listening, Fox Television did a great recreation of my case, and you can go onto YouTube and look up Dave Aaron, search for Dave Aaron, and there's a lot of people in the world named Dave Aaron, and you want to play UFO evidence collector, Dave Aaron, and make sure you play the one with the least amount of hits, because the first one I put up there, someone destroyed and took off all the audio, but there's a new one that's been up there for about 9 or 10 years now. So anyway, my dad had run in the house, called the police, and he sees what's happening. He sees me floating in the air from the bright light on the bottom of this craft, right? He sees me being moved by this. The best way to describe this beam was it was a solid light. In other words, it was solid. It wasn't a light that you can reflect or bend with a mirror. It was solid. The best way to describe that is like, you know, these mechanical pencils where the lead comes up as you twist the pen or pencil? That's what the light was like, and it hit me in the side. And for those people I told to look up on YouTube, it's followed that same place, Dave Aaron, UFO evidence collector, Dave Aaron. It's followed by a Strange Universe show where I show that burn area on my chest when I was on Strange Universe probably about 25 years ago. To make a long story as short as possible, which is pretty hard to do, it's something that it gets burned in your brain when you have something like that, because I can sit and talk to you today, which is many years later, and I can still recall every incident of that night because it was just so amazing. So the object had a series of squares around it, and when the first square lit up red, the next square to it lit up orange. So then the red got red, brighter until it turned to a cherry red. Then you had red, orange, and the third square turned to yellow. So anyway, to make all the colors of the rainbow, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, started rotating around this craft in the center of it. Still, no sound whatsoever, and it lifted off as if it owned the area and took off and flew to Burbank, went over the Puente Hills and the Whittier Hills, and as soon as it flew away, the police cars arrived. 2 police cars arrived with 2 men in each cars, and we told them what we saw, what happened, showed them the burn marks on the side of my chest, and they said, yeah, we had like 7 or 8 other calls tonight about a strange object, flying around the skies from Hacienda Heights, Roland Heights, Brea, and you people definitely saw something. And then they left. So I went back a month later, saw the police report, and the police report said that the object that my mother, dad, and I had witnessed that night, my mother was watching it through the bedroom window in the house because we were the last house on the block, and the the police report sergeant, the desk sergeant, at the older City of Industry Sheriff Station was on Nelson Avenue and Hacienda Boulevard. The new one is on Diamond Bar Boulevard because it was like 1964, so they since have built a totally new sheriff station in that area. But anyway, at that particular time, the Sheriff's Department on Nelson Avenue in the City of Industry, I looked at that report, and it listed my name and my dad's name and my mother's name, and it said the object of three of us that we saw that night must have been a helicopter. And I just freaked out. I told the desk sergeant, I said, impossible. Helicopters do not have beams that lift people off the ground. Helicopters do not have beams that push people backwards and lay them gently on the street. Helicopters make a terrible noise, you know. I want to see the commanding officer here. So a captain came, and I told the captain, I said, you change that police report right now. That was not a helicopter. Of course, in 1964, we didn't know all the things we know today in 2017 here in November. So, I mean, I demanded. I mean, I was so mad, René, you have no idea. In other words, they were calling my mother and my dad and I fools, right, that we couldn't tell a helicopter from an unknown object. So anyway, the captain there said that if I didn't get out of there and quit making a commotion, he was going to arrest me for being a nuisance. Mm-hmm. So I left, and I said, someday I'm going to get even with you people. Someday. And then the home video recorder came out, and the rest is history.
That's where it all started. That's where it all started for you in the audio video clearinghouse. Now, when you that event happened in 64. Now, Strange Universe, where I worked on that series, as you know, was in 96 and 97. So
were you able to see the show that I was on?
Yeah, but so you were able to show those marks that far down the road, and are those marks still on you?
Right, that in that particular area, no chest hair will grow or anything. It's just totally. Well, I can't remember. There was a case in Canada, and maybe you can pull it up for me. There was a Frenchman in Canada. I want to call it the Lubeck case, but I may be wrong. And he had a series of burn marks across his chest. Do you remember that case where a UFO came and he got too close to it and it blasted off and it left these round circles all across his chest? Are you familiar with that case at all?
I don't remember that case, but I do remember the case in Texas of the woman and her son and her mother who got radiation burns.
Yeah, that's a Cash Landrum case. That's a little different. Right. That's a little different than the one I'm referring to. Anyway, this gentleman here had four rows of four circles going across, which looked like an exhaust port exhaust that burned him on his chest. And but what happened to me was a totally different type of device or whatever it was. It was just a solid beam that had hit me. And as that beam came towards me, I moved. So as I moved, the beam moved across my chest, too. So, I can only refer today in our type of talk, Earthling type of talk, as a laser. But lasers don't levitate people either or push them back. So anyway, I started out with 3 video recorders, which one I financed, one my dad bought for me, and one we put on a mobile credit card. And first catalog was a page and a half of just people that I knew in television or cameramen in television that had shot stuff on in those days, they used 16-millimeter motion picture film with sound, and a lot of a lot of just citizens used 8-millimeter movie film. And I took that 8-millimeter movie film and once the video recorder came out, I transferred all that footage onto videotape, and once I started advertising not only in UFO magazine, which was probably which is and was and will always be the best UFO magazine ever published, with you and Vicky. It was Vicky Cooper. It's Vicky Ecker now,
right?
And Don, and every other UFO magazine there was at that time, and we ended up with over like 165,000 members. And then Hollywood started calling, and we worked on the Roswell movie, and we did about 9 shows for hard copy, Entertainment Tonight, the Walt Disney Company, Fire in the Sky, Paramount. So it's just one of those things. And
you mentioned
Go ahead, Renee.
You mentioned Fire in the Sky. When you were talking about that beam hitting you, it sort of reminded me of the Travis Walton case. And
that's right, because he was hit by a beam in the movie. What really happened, we don't know, because I guess, it was Mel Torme's son, that wrote the script on that movie. I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
Yep, Tracy Torme.
Tracy Torme, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was I never put those two together. Maybe Travis Walton got hit by a much more powerful or different type of beam, because he was knocked out. I wasn't knocked out. So whether the craft was manned or unmanned, and I always get people saying, "Well, did you see any aliens?" And no, I didn't see any aliens. But what I saw definitely was nothing we had of that type of technology going back to 1964. See, time goes by real fast. We've been on the air almost a half hour already, and I've only told you like 5% of what has happened throughout this history.
Absolutely. Well, have you and Travis Walton ever spoken and compared stories?
No, I've never met the man, no.
Oh, you probably should. You two should probably talk.
But I can tell you 2 interesting things. Just about 6 months ago, I think it was 5 or 6 months ago, a friend of mine and I did some research on the Travis Walton case and the Roswell case, right? Mm-hmm. There have been 197 documentaries on Roswell. And there have been 72 documentaries on the Travis Walton case. Pretty interesting.
It really is. I remember you also early on in the show mentioned Betty and Barney Hill, and you getting that video of them being on that first interview. I'd love to see that sometime, by the way, but I got a chance to...
Well, you can't, because that was an audio tape, and what happened was if you go to Google and type in "City Destroys Rare UFO Audio Tapes," my girlfriend was at home, and she calls me and tells me that there's these men all around the house in these white suits, right? And they're in the garage taking out all my videotapes, which went back to 1941. I'm sorry, audio tapes. I had the world's largest audio tape collection from old radio shows. And when I went up to them and I said, "Hey, you're invading my property," and they had a court order to be able to go into the house and take whatever they needed. So I had a video camera, so I started shooting them with my VHS movie camera, and they took that away from me also. It was returned about 6 weeks later, so I went back, got a still camera, and took pictures with a still camera hiding in my car. So if you go on Google and type in "City Destroys Rare UFO Audio Tapes," you'll see those pictures I took, as well as the men in white coveralls wearing masks, breathing apparatus masks, probably not to be seen, going in and throwing all that stuff in the Dempsey dumpster. And here's the reason I think why. I was able to get from Area 51 a recording. I have no idea who sent it to me, and this has been mentioned in quite a few radio shows. Do you know who Dr. Bob Hieronymus is?
Of course I do. Yeah, absolutely. He's been on. We've had him as a guest on this show as well.
Okay. Yeah. In fact, that case broke on the full information broke on the Dr. Bob show, but I'm going to repeat it just for my own curiosity. Why would they send 8 men to a house, right, and just want to go in the garage and start going and looking for videotapes, of which there were about audio tapes, 1,200 of them. And here's the reason I think. I had a recording from Area 51 where a jet pilot that took off from the Air Force, I believe that's Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, am I correct? Your listeners can correct me, I think, through the internet.
Yeah, that's right.
And he puts out a mayday, 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 mayday. I had a flame out. I need to land, right? So he's in that restricted airspace over Area 51, right? And the other guy comes back and says, well, you can't land here. It's restricted airbase. And the guy says, well, I have a flame out, I'm diving from 7,000 or 10,000 feet, right? And if I don't land, I'll crash, and you're the only strip nearby. And then the other voice says, well, we don't care if you crash or not. You're not landing here. And luckily, the pilot was able to restart that engine and land back at Nellis. I think that's the tape they were looking for. But that's just my guess.
Wow. Hang on right.
That tape was. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hang on right there. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, you can continue your story, and we're going to have so much more with Video Dave Aaron when we come back. Welcome back to Night Vision. I'm your host, René Barnett. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We're talking with Dave Aaron. He is the owner and collector of the largest audio and video UFO library in the world.
No more video because no more audio because they were all taken away by unknown people. That date, by the way, was March 24th, 2012, when all my audio tapes were taken. Which I had to go to the internet to find out,
That's really wild. But and also we had talked. We started talking about the audio tapes when I brought up Betty and Barney Hill's story. I had a chance to meet Betty Hill at one of the UFO conferences many years ago, and we got to be friends and had lots of great phone conversations with her. She was living in Canada, and I was here in Los Angeles, but she was such a smart lady and a real fireball.
Very easygoing, very gentle. Yeah, she was on, I believe it was Bob Hieronymus' show, and I was on as a second guest, right? And she was just so normal, so natural, and you know what?
Yeah, what was interesting was that, that was sort of the first alien abduction case, for want of a better term, to sort of come out into the public purview. So the things that they came up with in their hypnotic regressions with their psychiatrist who they went to see because of problems that they began to have after this experience that they had in the forest there. And they, came up with all these interesting facts and things that they could not have known about, planetary placement that wasn't even known yet. The telescopes hadn't even picked them up yet until much later. They were found to be very accurate, that Betty drew these star maps and things that she was shown. And anyway, she was just a great lady, really, down to earth. You don't think of, talking about UFOs, you don't think of describing someone as down to earth, but she really, really was. And she and Barney, of course, were both social workers, and they were both activists.
He was a postman.
And they were both activists, though, and they were really, really interesting and nice and kind people. And I got to know Betty fairly well, and I asked her, we hear all about all these cases, these abduction cases and contactees and all these things, what do you think about all this? And she said, well, I think, obviously some could be accurate, some I don't believe. She said, but there's one case that I tell you, she says, I believe totally this happened, and that was the Travis Walton case. And I thought that was really a good sort of endorsement for Travis's story. And I had met Travis as well, during the course of my time at UFO Magazine, and then later on doing television shows and going to the various UFO events. And he did strike me as very, kind of honest guy. And I know in talks with Tracy Torme, Tracy actually chased Travis Walton for like 10 years after this incident.
Right, to get that movie made, yeah.
Travis did not want the attention. He was not looking to make money. He was not looking for attention. He wanted to forget about it. He didn't want his kids to...
I believe Fire in the Sky, though, came from a book he wrote, didn't it?
Yes, it
Which
did.
Was originally called the Travis Walton story. I want to go back to something on Bonnie and Betty Hill that you're probably aware of, but you may not have mentioned it. And for those people that don't know who Bonnie and Betty Hill is, their doctor was Benjamin Simon. Did I pull it out right? Their doctor was Benjamin Simon. I'm almost like 99% sure that was his name. And anyway, his conclusion was that they came up with dream transference. I'm sure you've heard this many times, right? That Bonnie or Betty were intercepting each other's dreams, which René has to be the most stupidest, dumbest, most ignoramus psychiatrist I have ever heard come up with an explanation, when the more logical explanation in my mind, and I've been doing this for 55 years now, was that they had some kind of strange, unknown encounter. So it's rather strange that Benjamin Simon, the doctor that worked on the case, would use...
Hi, it's me, that little voice inside your head. You spent all year taking care of business. Let Office Depot Office Max take care of you. There's this new HP Pavilion laptop with 8th generation Intel Core i5 processor. Save $200. Now just $449. Look at it. It's only $449 at Office Depot Office Max. Go ahead. You deserve it.
Taking care of business.
Offer ends 11/11. Limit 1.
Dream transference. Now, 25 years after the Betty and Barney Hill case broke, right, the nearest Air Force base there was Pease Air Force Base, P-E-A-S-E. And they denied and denied and denied for 25 or 30 years that there was nothing in that area that night, nothing on radar whatsoever, until finally they did admit that, yes, at that same night, at that exact same time that Bonnie and Betty Hill said they were in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, that, yes, there was an unknown object in that area at that time. Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah,
I sure wasn't. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, I mean that was
when you had eventually I ended up with like about 45,000 hours of UFO footage that I ran over and over and over for different customers. And as you start seeing things over and over and over and over, you remember little details that don't quite get out to the public.
I can imagine. And now, I know that people, you obtained videos that you recorded, from things that you saw on the air. You also, people started sending you their private videos. And
I couldn't believe the tapes I was getting in by the 10s and 20s per day.
And were they coming, now, did it get to the point where they were coming from different places around the world?
Oh, yeah, I got tapes from Israel, I got tapes from Greece, I got tapes from Italy, I got gobs of tapes from England. The problem was, in those countries, there's 4 different types of television transmissions in the world. So if a company orders, like RCA, for an example, actually started the VHS machine, which they bought the first ones from JVC, and they made no profit on it. It was $999. It only had one speed, which was SP, or standard play, and RCA figured they would make their money on accessories, which they did, battery packs and things like that, carrying cases. This was way before there was a camcorder. So as time went on, my first early tapes mainly were the Betamax format, because that was invented. The first Betamax came out 1979. Not the reel-to-reel Betamax, but the Betamax that took the cassette. So, what was so strange is I remember sitting down in front of my Xerox typewriter thinking, well, what do I want to call this stupid idea? And I just said, well, we'll call it the UFO Audio Video Clearinghouse, because the name of your company always wants to be able to tell you what your business is. That's one of the prime rules of business. And, of course, I'm also an investor in the stock market, and you learn a lot about companies, and I've been doing that for about 30 years myself also. So, like UFO Magazine, that was the name of the magazine, UFO Magazine. You know exactly what it was. It was a magazine about UFOs. And the word UFO Audio and Video Clearinghouse, I just think, was just dumb luck that that's the name I chose for the company, and people knew exactly what it was. It was a place where you could send UFO videos or UFO audios and see what somebody else shot. If someone shot a UFO in Florida. In fact, one of the largest tapes that we sent, there was many, but one of the largest cases that we sent out was and for some reason right now the name is a blank, but it was the case in Florida where the gentleman kept shooting UFOs in Florida.
Oh, the Fort Walton Beach? Was it the
right, but I'm trying to add something. It's coming to me. Is it Ed Walton? No.
Ed Walters.
I can't remember his name, but yeah, that was big news in Florida, and then it got on a hard copy, and there was another program at that time also out of Florida called Hard News, which was on channel KCOP. That also, that guy's name was, I think that guy's name was Ed Walters.
It was Ed Walters, and it was Gulf Breeze.
Right, the Gulf Breeze case, and rather strange that after...
Then they found the models made out of paper plates in his attic, remember?
Well, he sold his house is what happened.
Yeah.
Where him and his wife lived. He sold his house, and the new people that moved in went up into the attic and, found a model. So, you take that case, very strange. You take the one we were talking about at the beginning of the show, the Cash Lantern, by the way, are the names of two people. Vicky Cash, Vicky Landrum and her son, and the mother. I think her name was Doretta Cash, right?
I think it was Betty.
Down the road in Texas.
It was Betty Cash, I believe.
Yeah, Betty Cash, you're right. We're driving down a road in Texas. This big triangle-shaped object comes across the road. She gets out to look at it. It's followed by 20 or 30 or 40 helicopters. The car gets blazing hot. When she goes back to turn the handle on, they have both since passed away. I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
Yes, yeah.
But they have both. They both have since passed away. But when she went to grab the car handle was so hot that it actually seared her hand, and the dashboard actually started melting and smoking.
Yeah.
So, that she filed a lawsuit, against the Air Force at the nearest Air Force base there in Texas, which I can't recall the name of it. And, of course, they denied her claim and denied her case and everything. Yet, 2 days later, a team of backhoe, a backhoe is what you would call a steam shovel in the old days, a backhoe came and dug up that entire road and the dirt up to 12 feet down and redid the whole road. Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the ladies that passed away, they both got cancer, and, they both had radiation burns. So
right. Too,
they believed, they believed themselves that their illnesses were a direct result of that experience that they had, of the radiation burns that they got from whatever that was, that craft.
See the general public, and we really have to give credit, whether it's MJ12 or Majestic or the NSA or the NSA or the CIA, and there's another one that very few people know of called the NRO. That's the National Reconnaissance Office, and they're the people that run and operate our spy satellites, right? It's been like 71 years, I think, since the Roswell crash, or 71 years since the first Foo Fighters were started. And here it is, when we're doing this show. By the way, is this show recorded later so people can go back and listen to it? Is there a
yes,
where
yeah,
shows are stored?
Dave, yes, there's an archive, and it's also available on iTunes, Stitcher, Roku, and many, many, many other platforms. It's going to be available in a lot of places. But I'll send you the link once it's posted in the archive on the InceptionRadioNetwork.com.
Okay, let me continue. There's another group called the Brown Berets, which very, very, I probably won't be alive tomorrow after I get off your show, but at least I got the information out. There's a group called the Brown Berets. Do you remember in Bakersfield when the first stealth fighter, the F-17, crashed in Bakersfield? Do you remember that?
I don't.
Well, the F-17 was actually flying since like 1984, right? And it was like as secret as the U-2 was, or the SR-71, which I believe we call the Blackbird, if I remember the nomenclature on it. Once they released the name for it. And anyway, this stealth fighter crashed in Bakersfield, and it was still top secret. They had it for 10 years, right? So it happened that the KNBC helicopter right here in Los Angeles saw a fire. So they went over there and flew it, right? Went and flew there and started videotaping this fire, and the announcer is saying, boy, there's really strange pieces of wreckage here. I've never seen anything like a square wing or an octagon wing. In the meantime, this group called the Brown Berets on the other side of Bakersfield went and deliberately lit a fire, a forest fire, to bring all the police and all the people to the forest fire. So the CIA or whoever was running the stealth F-17 program, or the CIA, right, wanted the people to not come to that area. But it was too late because KNBC got that video out, and within 2 days, the government had to release that we did have such a thing as a stealth fighter. See, there's little stories like this when you've been in the UFO investigation and research that very few people are even aware of,
Well, sure. And I can imagine, you were saying that, when you look at these videos, you look at them over and over and over again. And I'm sure there's been times when you've gotten a video of something, and then, after seeing it so many times, you sort of notice something else that maybe you didn't see the first time around. Because I know how that can happen if your eyes become accustomed to everything in that image, and you begin to maybe pick out other things. But I was wondering, since you do get videos and have received video from all over the world, do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite of something that came to you, and can you tell us how you obtained it and what it was?
Yes, I'm trying to think of the producer's name of Friends. The producer of Friends.
I know who you're talking about, and I can't remember his name. It's a guy. He was the supervising producer, and he was very, very interested in the paranormal and UFOs. And
right, and he also produced a show called Weird TV.
Yep.
And I was on that show for 4 seasons, and I had a 5 to 7 minute section called UFO Dave's Video Clip of the Week, right? And we invited people. We were talking about the strangest clip. The strangest clip I have ever seen. We need to go back and do a little history. How much time do we have until our next break?
Oh, we got 7 minutes. That's a lifetime.
Okay.
And by the way, if you were on Weird TV with that Friends producer, you must have known Arthur Maturo, who worked on. I knew
Arthur was the one of the directors, of the show,
Yeah, wonderful guy.
I knew Arthur very well.
Great.
In fact, it was Arthur. We're right in the middle of two different things here. Arthur called me and asked me to go to the show, right? If I wanted to be on the show. At that same time, Don Ecker from UFO Magazine was putting on a huge special in Disney World in Florida for a ride they opened there called Alien Encounters from the New Tomorrowland.
I remember that. I remember when they went.
Well, I was one of the people that went there because it was a dual type grand opening. There's a documentary on the internet. You go to YouTube and you type in Alien Encounters from the New Tomorrowland. Yeah. And it was done, the host was the late host Robert Urich from Vegas. Oh, right. He was the host. And they flew us all down there. Of course, on different planes. It was the greatest collection of UFO experts assembled in one place, and Don Ecker really, really worked his brains out to get us all down there. George Knapp was there. Who was the old man that passed away? That him and his wife, Jewish couple, that were experts in the Sumerian language. What was his name?
Oh, Zechariah Sitchin.
Zechariah Sitchin was there. Bud Hopkins was there. Kevin Randall was there. I mean, you name it, they were all there. And Disney also videotaped that with 3 cameras. And at the same time, I was working on a special by the same name called Alien Encounters from the New Tomorrowland that aired only on Disney-owned stations across the country. So I told Arthur, I'm sorry, I can't do the show because I have, 14 free days at Disney World, and all I have to do is do television interviews from 8 in the morning until noon, and the rest of the time I'm free, and when I come back I'll be happy to do the show. So the first 2 or 3 shows of Weird TV I was not on. And when I came back, we went down, they had a nice studio, green screen and the whole bit, and unfortunately those never got on YouTube or anything, but
I actually have a collection of VHSs of Weird TV that Arthur gave me.
Yeah, I have all the shows too.
Isn't that wild?
I was what happens when the media first approaches you, and I was a furniture salesman, I was a pizza maker, I just had these, my first job was a string bean picker when I was 14 years old. And then suddenly when Yeah, let's see, we worked 10 hours a day, 4 of us, where Norwalk High School now is, and I think we made 75 cents for the day.
Oh, my gosh.
In 110-degree sun. So it's funny how each of us, one became a computer programmer for, let's see, Toastmasters International. Another one became a very, very well-known insurance agent for the Chubb Group. I went into UFOs, and it's just interesting how as we age, different things fall into our lap. And we all became from string bean pickers at 14 and 15. We all became fairly successful businessmen. But my main reason for starting the UFO Clearinghouse was not to make money. My main reason was to get even with that desk captain that told me that I saw a helicopter. And you'd be surprised how many UFO videos I would get from police officers from all around the country.
Wow.
But never any from the city of Industry where I lived. Well, actually, I lived in Hacienda Heights with my parents, but the next town over was the city of Industry.
Wow. Well, you know what? This sounds like a good time to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be scooting right on into the final half hour of Night Vision Radio with me, your host, René Barnett, and with my special guest tonight, Dave Aaron of UFO Audio Video Clearinghouse, the largest...
Have you still got me on there, René?
Yeah, you better hurry.
I have a special surprise for all your listeners, so we don't want to forget.
Okay.
At the end of the show, okay?
All right. So hang in there with us. He's got a special surprise for us. We'll see what it is. Hang in there with us, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Night Vision. I'm René Barnett, your host. With me tonight is Dave Aaron of the UFO Audio Video Clearinghouse. Dave's going to tell us about a little surprise he has a little bit later. But we were talking about, Dave, when you were doing Weird TV with Arthur Maturo, and forgive me if I can't remember the producer's name from Friends, but you were talking about you were showing video clips. You had a regular spot on that show where you were showing video clips, and I had asked you about what your favorite clip was and what the best evidence was, and I believe there was something in the context of that show. Is that right?
Right. What we did is we asked people to send in clips of the show if they had shot a UFO. At that time, of course, the home video camera was out, the camcorder was out, and I asked people to send in footage, right? So we got this footage in before Bob Lazar. For those who don't know who Bob Lazar is, you need to go to the internet. And
just quickly, Dave. Bob Lazar in 1989 came forward to Las Vegas news anchorman George Knapp of KLAS News in Las Vegas with a story saying that he had been working out at Area 51 and had been harassed by people chasing him down and been arrested because he had taken his wife and his friend out to see some test flights of some supposed extraterrestrial craft at Area 51. Now, Bob Lazar's story is legendary now, but if you're too young to remember it, that's sort of it in a nutshell. So now, go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
So anyway, like I said, on a television show, we asked people to send in clips if they shot a UFO. So we get this clip in from West Virginia, and this clip you can see on the internet by going to that same place I told you to go to, search on YouTube for Dave Aaron, And then there's a lot of people named Dave Aaron, but I usually show up as a first, second, or third person, play the one with the least hits, and first there's a report of me on Fox News, and it's followed by that Strange Universe show. And on that Strange Universe show, you'll see a clip there, which is just an outline of a UFO. You see the outline black disk of a UFO. Bob Lazar claimed that UFOs work out of anti-gravity propulsion, right?
Right.
That gravity is a wave. So this particular clip almost is exactly like that. If the UFO was turning on an anti-gravity field while the two guys were talking, going, look at that, what is it, a UFO? But we can see right through it, right? And it slowly fades into a UFO, then it fades out, and you only see the outside of it. So if gravity waves were being able to be bent off the craft, that is one of the most amazing clips I have ever seen, because you see a dish-shaped object, but only the black outline of it, like a silhouette. It was, and these guys, going back 4 or 5 or 6 years ago, probably don't even know, even though they probably shot one of the greatest UFO clips ever taken. And this was way before the computer, where people could use, different types of programs and change things,
Now, do you remember the backstory of that video? Like, who sent it to you? Was it just an individual? Did they tell you what the circumstances
there were two guys there, and I said they were sent in by so-and-so and so-and-so, and you'll have to see this. But you know what? I never thought much about it until, I think it was maybe 5 years later that Bob Lazar came forward, and he was mentioning how the craft that he saw tested in Area S4 suddenly, kind of like... Remember he mentioned like a candle burning, and it still slowly disappeared, and that's exactly what this video shows is a UFO that you can see right through.
He said, Bob Lazar said that he saw a demonstration of the ability through technology to manipulate time and space, and the candle was one of the things. One of the things that they were able to do, he said, was actually freeze the candle. Freeze the flame and everything. Just make it stop moving, manipulate it in that way, and then make it sort of disappear. So that was really interesting. I think there's still a lot to learn about the Bob Lazar story. There was a time when I owned a television production company by the name of Blue Book Films, which is a kind of an obvious name, and we actually owned the life rights of Bob Lazar for a couple of years, and we're going to try to get a film made. We had some interest, but we didn't get that film made then. But I wonder about now, if it's time now to really tell that story. And I wonder if
I just remember the name of the producer of Friends. His name was Todd Stevens.
You're absolutely right, Todd Stevens. I apologize, Todd Stevens, if you ever hear this broadcast. But yes, I did know Todd, but I knew Arthur a lot better because I actually worked with Arthur on Strange Universe. And actually...
Right. I remember when Arthur told me that he was working. I didn't know you were working there, but...
yeah.
I was...
Arthur was actually in my department. He was a researcher, and I was the research director there for the first year that I was there. Then I started producing. But, Arthur's a great guy, and Todd Stevens was the supervising producer of Friends, which, of course, was a huge television show, network television hit. But he had this really keen interest in the paranormal, and especially in UFOs, and that's what his real love was, I think.
Yeah, he put up all the money for the studio and the green screen and the computers for Weird TV. Yeah. And he let Arthur ran the show, but but Todd was the executive producer behind it. Anyway, I want to go back to Bob and this particular clip. I'm a little disappointed with Stanton Friedman, although Stanton Friedman has done excellent work in UFO research. But Stanton Friedman kind of has a thought pattern that it's my way or the highway, and he just refuses to believe Bob Lazar's story. And there's just too many things that Bob Lazar has said, plus another gentleman that came out that said that he worked with Bob Lazar. And also, remember when Bob Lazar said he worked at Sandia Laboratories in New Mexico, and they said, nope, no such person, no, that guy never worked here. And then they found his name listed in the Sandia, New Mexico National Laboratories. Remember when that story came out? That he was actually listed in the phone book?
Yep, I sure do.
So it kind of seems like here's what I think. I think that we are dealing with something that is so beyond the comprehension of us human beings, like trying to show Christopher Columbus, right, a nuclear-powered submarine. How do you explain to old Chris, right, that, well, see, this thing called uranium, right, it decays, and as it decays, it creates heat. And if you put a boiler above that, it creates steam, and that steam turns a turbine, and that turbine turns a shaft, that turns a propeller, and that's how a submarine moves underwater. It's beyond anything Christopher Columbus could understand. And as you know, Bob Lazar had mentioned that there were a few people killed at Area S4 because they were trying to back engineer a UFO, and something went wrong, and the craft exploded, and they told the press, because it made like a 5.4 earthquake in Nevada or Las Vegas, that it was an underground nuclear test, which it wasn't. It was, according to Bob Lazar, a UFO that had exploded underground. So I think as human beings, we cannot comprehend what is going on, and that's why this is so top secret. I was on a show just last week, and we were talking about Area 51 and the security around Area 51. And, they say there's no UFO stored there. It's strictly to test, future.
I'm a one-trick pony, literally. I show up at kids' parties and act cute. That's pretty much it. So excuse me for being bitter when Geico says not only could we save you money on car insurance, but we do more, like give you 24/7 access online, over the phone, or even via our award-winning mobile app. Well, ooh la la, aren't they multi-talented? Hey, I said organic carrots.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Spy planes or future supersonic stealth planes, right? Logically, let's just speak logically. If I see a new airplane that's developed, right, and I happen to be able to get in the area, I mean, is the use of deadly force really necessary because I saw a new shaped plane? They would kill me over that. And that show was called Roswell Secrets Unrevealed. Yeah. And that we did that for the National Geographic Channel. It aired about 3 weeks ago. But we started working on it about 5 months ago. But anyway, they interviewed one of the guards there, and the guard said, yeah, when someone crossed that line, I would contact my commanding officer, and he would say, open fire on them, eliminate them.
Wow.
So my question to the listeners and you is, is it really worth killing someone just because they saw a new type of airplane. I think there's much, much more that's there or goes on there. Otherwise, you wouldn't have security that starts 6 miles away from the base.
Deadly force authorized. That's what the signs say.
Yes, and they interviewed a couple of the guards that retired, and the guards asked their commander what they should do, and the guards said they had orders to open fire if people crossed that perimeter. Once you go past that fence where it says warning, military installation, use of deadly force is authorized, they do have the right to use deadly force. And who knows how many people snuck in there or did get in there that we've never seen again. We really don't know. You know, they were going to make a movie about 3 teenagers that snuck into Area 51, and for some reason that movie was never made. In the movie Independence Day, they asked the government if they could use fighter planes and helicopters, not the remake of Independence Day, but the original Independence Day, right? They asked the government if they could use jets and helicopters, et cetera, and they said yes, as long as you don't mention Area 51, because at that time, Area 51, according to us peasant amateur people, that base didn't exist at that time. So they said, no, you cannot mention Area 51 in the movie, and if you do, you can't use any of our jets or helicopters. So they used CGI graphics in that movie instead, and were still able to... in fact, it was the same guy that played Data in the Star Trek The Next Generation. That was the scientist at Area 51, if you remember the movie.
Yeah.
Brett Spiner, I believe.
Yep. Absolutely.
So anyway, I kind of have a special surprise for your listeners there, and I'm doing this totally at my cost. Do you know where the Pickwick Center is in Burbank?
I do, yeah. Been there several times.
I didn't know what city you lived in. Anyway, the Pickwick Center is a huge series of auditoriums where the building, the walls open and close to allow more and more people in. And about 25 years ago, the gentleman that ran Area 51 was also a musician for the L.A. Philharmonic Orchestra, and I just can't remember his name right now. But he ran MUFON L.A., and I did a talk down there with video called Aliens Captured on Videotape. And the room held about 400 people. Well, they had about 4,000 people try to show up, and they had to block down Burbank Boulevard. The fire marshal came and wouldn't let a lot of people in. It was just total panic, about 2 hours before I even started. So if anybody would like a free copy of that on DVD, that entire talk, and you'll see what, again, we think, because we don't know for sure, but there were many strange beings or strange types of creatures that were sent to me on videotape. Most of the ones that I showed, some have been shown on TV, some have never been shown on TV. So if any of your listeners out there want a free DVD of this, all I have to do is pay me my cost. My cost to edit it, mail it, package it is about $10. And you just, even if you can't remember the address, if you can just write UFO House 92320, it'll come to me. But the actual address, to make it easier for the post office, is UFO House 1077 California Street, Calamasa, California 92320. But if you can't remember all that, if you just write UFO Clearinghouse or UFO House, but have that zip code there, 92320, I get hundreds and hundreds of pieces of mail every day. So they just know if it says UFO, it goes to Dave Aaron. But try to put the address down if you can. So that's why I gave you that address there. And anybody that wants to chat with me, I'm always open. I don't hide. I'm right there. You can email me at UYOUANDUFOSUNUFOs@gmail.com. And make sure the subject line says Night Vision Show, so I know it came from the show we're doing right now. And also, when you send that $10 in for that talk I did on aliens captured on videotape, make sure you please pay me in a money order, because I don't have time to sit and chase bounced or bad checks. So you got to pay me in a money order. Money order shouldn't cost you more than 65 cents. So that's my surprise for you, and maybe a little Halloween gift where I think it runs a little over an hour and a half, and we'll add some other specials in there just to keep it like around maybe 2 hours or so.
Can you tell us, like, of the aliens caught on tape, what do you describe? One of the best images that you have on there?
The best one, it was taken in Mexico, and I was presenting, 7, 8, 9 different shots, right? I'm sure you've seen the one where the alien pops up in the window, which has been on TV many times. But there was a clip that came from Mexico that these two women, one of them happened to have a camcorder, right? And they see this UFO in the sky, but the audio was in Spanish, so I can't understand it, right? So one of the people that was at the MUFON talk back in about 1998, 1999 said, "Oh, they're saying, show yourself, show yourself." So you see this beam come down, and then this being appears. Big, round, not watermelon, squash-shaped head, feet like E.T. had, and again, they're talking in Spanish, right? And I don't know what they're saying. So one of the people there was bilingual at the MUFON talk, and they're saying what the person in the audience told me is they're translating, "Oh, it's so ugly, it's so horrible looking, it's so ugly, Maria. Maybe we should go out of the house." And she says, "No, I must tape this. I must tape this." And that clip is really pretty astounding. One, they said, "Show yourself." So was this light in the sky able to read minds or pick their audio up, then either project down a picture of a being? It's really pretty fantastic. And
how big was it?
I'd love to have your listeners be able to view that.
Oh, I'd love to see it too. Now, how big was it? Were you able to see it to scale in any way?
Well, there's drawings of it. Mexico TV. Jaime Muson, if I got his name right, the one that started doing the 60 Minutes type TV show in Mexico.
Right.
After I got it, he started showing it on his show, and they showed drawings of it. Looks like the creature's about 4.5 to 5.5 feet tall. Remember the video camera that was? Do you know who Ralph McCarran is?
Yes. Yep. I sure do. He's doesn't he analyze video? Oops. Looks like we lost Dave. So I guess I'll just wrap it up. And I want to thank Dave Aaron for being with us tonight. Sorry that we ended so abruptly, but so many interesting stories and so much great video evidence. Again, if you want to take advantage of Dave's offer, just write to him at UFO House 92320 and he'll get it. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Take care and good night, Edward. Good night, everyone.